Burt Reynolds was born on February 11, 1936, in Lansing, Michigan, and raised primarily in Riviera Beach, Florida. He developed an early interest in sports and became a standout high school football player. His athletic performance earned him a football scholarship to Florida State University, where he played as a halfback. A series of injuries ended his athletic aspirations, forcing him to reconsider his life direction. During his recovery, he began studying theater and gradually shifted toward acting, eventually pursuing work in New York and later in Hollywood. His early years in the entertainment industry consisted of small roles in television and stage productions, including appearances in Gunsmoke and Riverboat. Over time, he became recognized for his charisma and confident screen presence, which led to larger television and film roles. By the early 1970s, Reynolds had established himself as a leading actor known for his relaxed demeanor, humor, and charm. Films like Deliverance, 1972, expanded his public profile, demonstrating that he could lead serious dramatic productions rather than only light entertainment. The combination of rugged appeal and comedic timing made him a reliable draw at the box office. His appearances in talk shows and interviews cultivated a media persona that was confident and self-assured. This constructed image became part of his career identity, influencing how the public perceived him for decades. During this period, he also navigated the pressures of stardom, including the expectations placed on leading men in Hollywood. Sally Field was born on November 6, 1946, in Pasadena, California. She entered entertainment from a different direction, beginning with sitcom television roles in the 1960s. Her early work included the series Gidget and The Flying Nun, which established her as a familiar face in American households but limited her opportunities to pursue more complex characters. Field sought to be recognized for dramatic depth rather than light comedic roles. She underwent professional acting training, including work under the guidance of respected teachers, in order to transition into more serious roles. Her persistence paid off when she earned acclaim for televised dramatic works, demonstrating emotional nuance and control in her performances. Both Reynolds and Field were well established in the entertainment industry by the time they met in the mid-1970s. Reynolds had become one of the most commercially successful film actors in the United States, while Field was gaining momentum as an actress proving her range. Their careers intersected when they were cast together in the 1977 film Smokey and the Bandit, a light-hearted action comedy with a regional American setting. The film centered on a straightforward concept that relied heavily on character chemistry and timing. Because of the nature of the film, the actors' dynamic needed to be natural and consistent across scenes. The on-screen connection between Reynolds and Field appeared easy and credible to audiences. The public responded positively to their interactions, and the success of Smokey and the Bandit confirmed the compatibility of their professional styles. Their collaboration did not rely on theatrical intensity or dramatic confrontation. Instead, it was built on rhythmic timing, relaxed conversation, and a sense of familiarity that translated well to film. Following the success of the first project, the two actors worked together on multiple films, including Hooper, 1978, and The End, 1978. These projects reinforced public association of the pair as a recognizable screen partnership. During the period of their collaboration, they entered into a personal relationship. The pairing attracted media attention, especially because both were prominent public figures at the peak of their visibility. Their relationship existed alongside demanding work schedules and extensive public exposure. Field focused on strengthening her career identity and building long-term credibility as a dramatic actress, maintained a clear sense of professional direction. Reynolds, meanwhile, was navigating pressures associated with being one of the most commercially bankable actors of the era. The relationship unfolded within these conditions, which shaped how each individual interpreted their partnership. While their professional pairing produced successful films and their personal relationship lasted several years, differences in long-term goals and life structure gradually influenced the direction of the relationship. Field continued to move forward in a dramatic career trajectory, earning significant acclaim and progressing toward award-winning roles in films such as Norma Ray, 1979, and Places in the Heart, 1984. Her emphasis on internal discipline and emotional clarity shaped her decisions. Reynolds continued pursuing high-profile film work, balancing commercial entertainment with an established public persona that emphasized effortlessly and charm. These differing career paths, combined with the demands of high visibility and external expectations, contributed to the eventual end of their relationship. Their separation was not defined by public scandal, extended conflict, or dramatic statements. Instead, it was shaped by practical differences in the forward movement of two careers that required different forms of investment and focus. After the separation, both continued their careers independently, without public hostility or ongoing dispute. For many years, their relationship remained a subject of cultural memory and media references because of the visibility of their work together. Their films continued to circulate on television and in popular discussions of American cinema from the late 1970s. As time passed, the meaning of their relationship shifted in public understanding, viewed not as ongoing but as a distinct chapter in both careers. After their separation, Burt Reynolds and Sally Field continued their careers independently, each experiencing significant developments that shaped their public identities. Sally Field moved further into critically recognized dramatic roles. Her performance in Norma Rae in 1979 earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, confirming her transition from television personality to respected dramatic lead. This period marked an established shift in her career. She gained control over her public image and demonstrated that her early sitcom roles did not define her long-term identity as an actress. She built a reputation for selecting roles that required emotional complexity and resilience. Sally Field continued to work consistently through the 1980s and 1990s, maintaining a careful approach to managing her public and private life. She avoided allowing public interest in her past relationships to influence how she presented herself professionally. She focused on her craft, taking projects that aligned with her standards and allowed her to maintain long-term regard within the industry. She also balanced family life and personal responsibilities, choosing to prioritize stability. This structured approach created a clear division between her public career and her private world. Burt Reynolds approached his post-relationship years differently. During the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s, he remained a major box office draw and one of the most visible figures in American film. Movies such as A Cannonball Run, 1981, and Smokey and the Bandit sequels sustained his public popularity. However, Reynolds also faced professional challenges, including projects that received mixed critical responses, financial instability at various points, and public expectations tied closely to his charismatic screen persona. His image became both a strength and a constraint. The persona that made him widely popular also created pressure to maintain a particular presentation of confidence and humor, even in periods of personal or financial strain. These differing trajectories reflect the core structural differences between Field and Reynolds during and after their relationship. Field prioritized internal growth and long-term skill development. Reynolds navigated an industry that responded to market appeal and personality-based recognition. Their separation allowed both of these career paths to unfold without interference. Despite decades passing after their relationship ended, the public continued to associate the two because of the cultural impact of their shared film work. Interviews and articles throughout the 1990s and 2000s routinely brought attention back to their relationship, often presenting it as one of the most memorable celebrity pairings of its era. Both Reynolds and Field addressed these questions consistently. Field acknowledged that the relationship was meaningful but did not shape her long-term emotional identity. Reynolds acknowledged that the period represented a significant part of his personal life. As Reynolds aged, his reflections on his life and career became more direct. During the later stages of his career, particularly in interviews published during the 2000s and 2010s, he spoke more openly about past decisions, personal relationships, and missed opportunities. These reflections were not expressed in dramatic or sensational terms. Instead, they were framed as part of a broader process of evaluating a long public life. In these interviews, his comments on Sally Field remained consistent. He described her as deeply important in his past and acknowledged that he considered her central to a significant chapter in his life. Reynolds' reflections indicated that he viewed the relationship with Field as one of emotional significance, but he did not describe it in terms of unresolved attachment. His statements reflected recognition rather than emotional pursuit. He noted that the relationship ended because of circumstances and personal directions that could not be aligned at the time. His language suggested a retrospective understanding rather than regret positioned as longing. He recognized the value of the partnership in terms of companionship, collaboration, and emotional connection during a particular stage of his life. Sally Field did not respond publicly to every reference Reynolds made to their relationship. She continued to maintain clear boundaries between private personal history and public career identity. Her remarks, when made, were consistent in tone. She acknowledged the importance of the relationship in her past, but maintained that it was not the defining element of her life. Her approach emphasized emotional clarity and separation between past and present. Her focus remained on personal stability and professional integrity. As Reynolds' health began to decline in later years, discussions of his life often referenced his relationship with Field as part of broader evaluations of his experiences. Public interest increased not because of renewed developments, but because the relationship served as a recognizable point of continuity in his life narrative. Reporters and interviewers continued to ask about it because it represented a widely known cultural memory. Reynolds continued to answer with clarity and consistency, acknowledging Field as significant but also recognizing that the era had passed. His remarks in the final years of his life framed the relationship as meaningful, formative, and important in shaping his emotional development. These statements did not suggest unfinished situations or unresolved conflicts. Instead, they reflected recognition of what the relationship provided when it occurred. The emphasis was on acknowledgement rather than revision. By the time of his later life reflections, the public conversation about their relationship had shifted from speculation to understanding. Their relationship was seen not as a continuing emotional narrative, but as a completed chapter that held long-term significance for both individuals, each in different ways. In the final decade of Burt Reynolds' life, the public narrative surrounding his career shifted from active celebrity coverage to legacy evaluation. Interviews during this period were more reflective, and questions about his past relationships increasingly focused on meaning rather than personal detail. The relationship with Sally Field continued to be referenced because of how strongly it remained embedded in cultural memory. Reynolds did not avoid the subject. Instead, he acknowledged it clearly, and his statements were consistent across multiple interview contexts. Reynolds described Sally Field as someone he admired professionally and respected personally. He emphasized that her discipline, emotional intelligence, and ability to approach her work with long-term focus were qualities he did not fully understand or value at the time of their relationship. He noted that his public persona during their time together made it difficult for him to express vulnerability or communicate internal concerns. His identity in the entertainment world was connected to confidence and humor. This identity acted as a protective layer that became difficult to remove in private life. When discussing Field in later years, he explained that this barrier limited the emotional clarity of their relationship. The idea of last word in connection with Burt Reynolds and Sally Field refers to the reflections he shared during the later years of his life, when he was speaking from a standpoint of assessment rather than self-image management. He stated that he considered Sally Field to be the one relationship in his life that was influenced most heavily by timing and personal readiness. He acknowledged that at the time they were together, he was not prepared to make the adjustments necessary to sustain a long-term partnership built on emotional consistency. These comments did not express regret in dramatic terms. Instead, they represented recognition of how personal development influences relationship outcomes. Sally Field, when asked in later interviews about Reynolds' statements, responded in a direct and measured way. She recognized the importance of their relationship within the timeline of both of their lives, but she maintained that the relationship had a clear beginning and ending that matched a particular stage in their personal and professional development. She did not frame the relationship as unresolved or characterized by unfinished emotional process. She stated that it was meaningful and that it existed within the context of who they were at the time. Field continued to maintain clear boundaries in discussing the past, consistent with her overall approach to privacy and self-direction. The consistency in their later life statements about the relationship demonstrated that neither maintained narratives of conflict, regret, or emotional difficulty related to each other. Their comments reflected different perspectives, but aligned in defining the relationship as significant during a particular chapter rather than ongoing. This clarity distinguished their public recollection from more speculative or sensational interpretations. Burt Reynolds' final years included periods of declining health and reduced public activity. During these years, his interviews gained additional attention because audiences and media recognized that his reflections represented late-stage summarization rather than midlife commentary. When speaking about Sally Field during this time, his statements became concise and direct. He identified her as an important person in his life and acknowledged the emotional impact of the relationship, while also identifying the structural reasons it ended. The simplicity of the language he used in these reflections contributed to the sense of clarity associated with the term last words. The cultural response to these remarks often highlighted the emotional tone of acknowledgement and acceptance. Public and media interpretation focus on the idea that Reynolds saw Field as someone who contributed to his life in a meaningful way and whose influence remained present in his long-term understanding of himself. This interpretation aligned with his statements, which presented the relationship as formative rather than unresolved. Sally Field continued to be asked about these remarks after Reynolds' passing in 2018. Her responses remained consistent with her earlier statements. She did not reframe or reinterpret the relationship in light of his reflections. She maintained that the relationship was substantial and important in its time, but that it had reached a natural conclusion. Her commitment to emotional boundaries and personal clarity remained unchanged. The legacy of Burt Reynolds and Sally Field's relationship is structured around the cultural memory of their on-screen partnership, the professional compatibility they demonstrated in multiple films, and the mutual respect reflected in later interviews. Their relationship has been discussed as an example of how two individuals can share significant connection during a particular stage of life without the relationship extending indefinitely. Their public statements reinforce this interpretation, preventing speculation from reshaping the narrative into one of conflict or unresolved emotion. Burt Reynolds' final words about Sally Field did not involve new revelations or dramatic reinterpretations. They were acknowledgments shaped by perspective gained over decades. The statements centered on recognition of value, emotional significance, and the effect of personal development on the outcomes of relationships. These reflections form the closing frame of how their partnership is now understood, based on clarity, distance, and mutual respect rather than uncertainty, ongoing attachment.